Well, hello, everybody, church. I hope you are doing well. I just returned from Wild Goose, which was a huge progressive Christian festival that was held in Hot Springs, North Carolina. And the coolest part, and it was cool, and there's a lot cool. Stan taught, and from the main stage, he was unbelievable. And Rachel sang, and that was great. And we had Mama Bear, Sarah Cunningham, Free Mom Hug. She spoke, and a lot of cool stuff. But the coolest thing was when many of you would recognize me or see Neil, and we would finally get to interact face to face. That was the best of the best of the best. So it was awesome. It made us really say, gosh, we want to get out where you are. Maybe you come to Atlanta where we are. But we'd love to be able to hug your neck and really be able to get your face in our mind and be able to have a hug. But that was super. It made it for a really good week. I'm excited about our conversation starter today. I think it's going to be helpful for all of us. Some movies come out and they're enjoyed quickly, but then they are forgotten. We all have seen a lot of movies like that. But The Greatest Showman wasn't one of those movies. Since it was released in 2017, the film continues to inspire its audience around the world, and that audience continues to grow. You probably know the story. It's loosely based on the life of Phineas Taylor Barnum, the founder of the Barnum and Bailey Circus, the circus many of us grew up going to when we were kids. When I say loosely based on his story, it really is loosely based. There's some factual things about the movie. For example, he did have a wife named Charity. He did have a museum of oddities that eventually morphed into the circus, and he did introduce America to the Swedish opera singer Jenny Lind. Those things are true. But other than those things, the movie fictionalizes almost everything else. But you know what? That didn't bother me because they created a compelling story that stirred my heart. And because I know the kind of people you are, I bet it stirred your heart as well. Let me just remind you of the story. The plot has the ambitious Phineas looking for his purpose. He didn't know what he was supposed to do with his life. He had big dreams. He wanted to live a big life. And you might remember as a teenager, he had been so destitute and he was starving that he was helped by a disfigured anonymous woman. I think that will play into the story a lot when he begins to meet these other people who are a little different. But that act of kindness seemed to imprint on him. He recruits, when he finally gets this idea for a show, he begins to recruit people that are different. He recruited a little person that he renamed Tom Thumb. That would be the centerpiece of the show. He invites into the fold a seriously tall man, a huge obese man, a bearded woman, Siamese twins, the hairy boy, a tattooed man, and his show is introducing people to humans that are different. And as you would expect, in that day and time, people came in droves to see these oddities, these unusual people. Now, the circus had its opponents for sure, and so he had all kind of difficulties he had to overcome. He had to fight against so many cultural norms to create a home for his own family, but also to create a home for those people he had invited to join the circus. Two things jumped out to me in the whole movie, and I've thought about this a lot. One, P.T. Barnum is finding in his life he's never going to be accepted by the in crowd like he wanted to. You remember that? He really wanted to be seen as a success, and he wanted to be seen as upper class, but the upper class never really were going to embrace him. But the second thing was the not so normal people who were becoming a part of the circus and finding their community around him. He betrayed them at one point in the movie, but later he realized he was a part of something very beautiful. These people who were not seen as normal were actually some of the most beautiful people he had ever met in his life. The story of Tom Thumb, when he meets the young, small, diminutive individual, that he's an angry and isolated person, but Barnum makes him a star, and he gives his life purpose. And then my most favorite part of the movie was the bearded lady. You might remember he had walked into a laundry one day and he heard this beautiful singing. And when he tried to find where the singing was coming from, he went back kind of behind the curtain and he saw a woman with a beard. And she was so, I guess, embarrassed about being out in public. She just did her singing from behind. but he embraced her, loved her, gave her a stage to sing on, and it gave her purpose. It was a beautiful thing. Barnum starts to have a process from a selfish place. He does start at a selfish place, but he begins to grow, and he discovers these people that he thought were so abnormal. He realized they were really his people, and he realized they were beautiful people, and they really formed a community in the movie. And so I thought it was beautiful, and I kind of want to launch from that. I was thinking this week about the fact that 38 years ago, I became a pastor of a small Southern Baptist church in Rosenberg, Texas. From that moment, I pastored 3 Southern Baptist churches, and then 26 years ago, I started the Village Church in Atlanta. And people would tell you, if they came to our church, they would say, you have the most interesting mix of characters in your church I've ever seen, and we do. And then I had the privilege with Stan Mitchell and with Neil to help start this beautiful church called Everybody Church. And we really did start it because people were telling us they were geographically detached from any kind of an inclusive, progressive congregation where their whole family could feel embraced. And if they weren't geographically detached, they were certainly psychologically detached from walking back through the doors of a church because they'd been hurt. And so we said, why don't we start something online as a way that we can reach people who maybe want to resonate with a church like that. So that's a really cool thing. And we have a super diverse group of people who are part of Everybody Church. But my question this week I want you to think about is, how do you go from being a Southern Baptist church pastor, not exactly a bastion of open-mindedness and open to all kinds of different people, how do you go from that to being involved in 2 diverse, eclectic mixes of all types of people in Atlanta and around the world type of churches? This metamorphosis doesn't maybe seem radical or weird to me anymore, but I'm assuming to some people they have to wonder, how do you do that? How do you get there? Well, that's one of the things that was beautiful about Wild Goose. Had Ray from my past 30 years ago walked into Wild Goose, he would have said, these are some unusual people. But Ray today walked into Wild Goose and said, these are my people. These are my people. So I just want to talk about maybe some things that have helped me learn to embrace all different kinds of people. First thing is this, I had to realize, quite frankly, nobody's normal. Isn't it funny that when I was conservative, fundamentalist back in the day, I thought our crowd was normal and everybody else was unnormal, abnormal. I think it was Christopher Barzak who first said, normal is just a setting on a washing machine. And I believe that's true. We're tempted to live under the illusion that somewhere out there are normal people. But the truth is, all of us have areas where we're not really considered normal. Here's the definition of normal: conforming to a standard, usual, typical, or expected. And we mostly conform. I mostly conform in this life. I mostly conform to what everybody else conforms to. But then there are always areas where we don't. Here's something else I've discovered. Most people have a tendency to like people who are just like them. And so there is a little bit of stretching to get outside of the box so you're around people that aren't exactly like you. Think about this with me. It was normal in the mid-20th century for men to wear short hair. That's normal. But some men, you remember the 60s, some men chose to wear longer hair. You know what they were called? Abnormal. It was normal for women back again when I was a kid, 1960s, it was normal for women to stay home while the men went out to make the money. But some women decided, hey, I don't want to stay home. I want to enter the workforce. We saw them as abnormal. I come from the South. It was normal in my childhood in much of the South to be racist. Most families that I knew growing up were racist. But some people were abnormal in the South who said, we're not racist. We don't believe the way the people around us believe. Again, while mostly we conform with societal norms, all of us have areas where we do things a little differently. Here's the second thing that I've learned that's been helpful. Different is good. God loves diversity, and I'm learning to love diversity. Now, that maybe doesn't sound radical to you because you're a part of Everybody Church. You've known this stuff. I'm telling you, I did not grow up knowing that. So many people are in a box. They live in a world where everybody has to be the same. And that sounds so boring. I've been studying church now for, I guess, nearly 40 years. And the concept of a church needing to welcome everyone, every church I've ever been in says that. We need to welcome everyone. We need to welcome everyone. But then they decide, but that's too hard. So we're just going to try to reach out to people who are just like us. I love that Everybody Church and the Village Church, which I started a long time ago, decided, no, we are going to be an everybody church. That means we don't have to be just alike. We want diversity. We want it to be as diverse as the world in which we live. And I think that's a beautiful thing. We want to see everything with heaven's eyes. We want to dream of a church the way it could be in its most beautiful form. I say again, God loves diversity. God must. Look at the variation God built into the universe, the different colors, the innumerable species, the euphony and cacophony of sounds from nature, the types of plants. There's plants with seeds, without seeds. There's algae, green algae, brown algae, the different animals, the different shapes of clouds, the taste of foods, bitter, sweet, salty, sour, umami, or savory, the smells that you can pick up on when you walk through a forest, the beauty of waterfalls, the uniqueness of every piece of sand on the seashore, the shapes of mountains, the differing landscapes from ocean to river to desert to forest. I read once this description, Yosemite and Maui in the North Pole and the Swiss Alps, how beautiful all of those things are. Dogs and mahi tuna and butterflies and bison. I say again, I believe God must love diversity, and God must love it in people too. The facial structures of every human, the different skin tones, from a fair-complected, red-headed person from Ireland with skin that's almost translucent to the darkest black skin from a person from Africa with the darkest complexion and every shade in between. We believe God's desire is for church, this community and assembly of people who want to follow and learn more. And following the divine, we will be a community filled with people from every walk of life, and so different, all of us will be different. Here's the third thing that I've realized. I should love people, all people, without an agenda to ultimately change them. Now, let me just admit to you, when I was a young Southern Baptist preacher, that's the way I saw everybody. If I met somebody and they were different, I could be okay with them being different because I was thinking, I'm going to do my best to change you. I don't think that anymore. Barbara Brown Taylor, she was at Wild Goose, and she is only the greatest preacher in America. I think many people think that. I certainly am one. She's fabulous. But she said this, and I think it's true. The problem is many of the people in need of saving are in churches. And at least part of what they need saving from is the idea that God sees the world the same way that they do. And I think that's so true. When I was in junior high, just getting into church, again, I loved people. I've always loved people. But truthfully, if they didn't go to church and they didn't go to a church like my church, I looked down on them a little bit because they didn't know God the same way I thought I knew God. And most of my conversations had an agenda tied to it because I wanted to change them into the people like me. Heaven forbid. I look back on that now and think that's the dumbest thing in the world because I was as clueless as everybody. But that's certainly what I thought. So I don't try to change people. It helps me dealing with people that are different. Another thing that's been helpful to me is to realize I need to see everyone through a lens of love. That's not just microphone talk. That's the gospel. That's what it means to follow Jesus, to see people through a lens of love. It's so easy to be judgmental, and I can so quickly slide into that. Let me tell you a funny story. Funny, it's sad too. We were at church, and we do a little thing middle of the service where we say, hey, hug somebody's neck, shake somebody's hand or whatever. So I was going to do that. I was kind of standing in the back, and this young couple that I know, they were just coming in. It was 11:30. It was halfway through the service. They're just coming in. And I thought to myself, why are they getting here at 11:30? Why don't they get here at 10:30 like everybody else and have some coffee and get to meet people and they wouldn't be rushed and they haven't missed the music? And my goodness, how are they ever going to be super successful in life if they're running 30 minutes late? And I'm just doing all of that crazy stuff. I don't know if y'all do it. Don't judge me if y'all don't. But I just was in my mind. It was racing. Still loved them. And so I would go to hug them and I noticed they're both soaking wet with sweat. And I think, man, that's weird. And so I go preach the sermon, and at the end of the sermon, I'm talking to some people, and they say, have you heard about, their names are Elbert and Samantha. Have you heard about Elbert and Samantha? I said, no, what? Tell me. They said, yeah, man, they lost their car, and they have to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And Elbert and Samantha they have 2 kids. They push strollers for Samantha to go to a bus stop where she catches a bus to get to the airport because she works for Starbucks at the airport. She has to be there like 5:30 in the morning. So they push the strollers, and then Elbert pushes both strollers from there. He pushes it several miles to where their babysitter lives, where he then drops the children off. Then Elbert walks several miles to his job. And then at the end of the day, Elbert gets off from his job, walks back several miles to pick up the children, goes back, picks up Samantha, who's getting off the bus. And they said, yeah, they got to church this morning just barely 11:30 because they had to walk. It was about 5 miles, their walk. And I thought, oh my gosh, why didn't I just look at them through the lens of love and just love them? Why did my crazy brain get involved and start making judgments about something that I didn't know anything about? Let me tell you how I learned about being non-judgmental about, for example, the poor. That's another group that I used to think, I'd see poor people and I think, I was raised middle class and, like many people, I had a good family situation, I'm white, all the things that are kind of beneficial. And I'd see somebody poor and I think, well, obviously they just don't work as hard as me because if they worked hard, then they wouldn't be poor. Then I read a book called Hand to Mouth, Living in Bootstrap America by Linda Tirado. And it changed me. I realized I didn't know anything about the real plight of the poor in America. I mean, I knew nothing. And I realized I was only being ignorant in my judgmentalism. And that's so true. I don't know people's story. Unless they share their story with me, I don't know it. And to assume that I know it is just wrong. I've told you this before. My dad is one of the biggest heroes to me in my life. And I remember as a little boy, my dad pointing to immigrants and him saying to me, son, you see that man? I don't know how he got here, but if he came here because he was trying to help his family, I want you to know I would do the same thing. If it meant swimming across a river so I could provide a better home for you and your sister, I want you to know I'd do that. And I remember him saying, you need to always honor those people because those people are brave and they're hardworking people. And they make our country better. And I've realized, how dare me or anybody else judge people when we don't know their situation? We don't know their situation. Wasn't Stephen Covey's book wonderful, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? I loved that book, and I especially love the 5th habit that he mentioned in that book, which was seek first to understand, then to be understood. Be empathetic. That's what I'm trying to say. Be empathetic. Be aware of other people's story and don't be judgmental. Remember when Trayvon Martin, when that first happened? I remember it was a big deal to me, but it wasn't as big a deal to me until one of the ladies in our church, her name is Sonia, and after service, I noticed Sonia was weeping softly. And I've always admired Sonia. She's one of my best friends. And I went over and said, what's wrong? And she said, my son in a couple of years is going to be the same exact size as Trayvon. And she said the thought that if he wore a hoodie and he encountered the wrong person, he could be shot. Not just shot, but then the person could turn himself in at the jail and then be released in a matter of just a couple of hours, be released. And it really he never was punished for shooting someone who was in the right place, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. His father lived in the neighborhood. Anyway, she told me that, and I thought, oh my gosh. I need to be empathetic, listen to people's stories, not be judgmental. When you do, you realize your world opens up to people who are maybe different, but it's a beautiful kind of thing. Final thing that has been helpful to me is in embracing this idea of diversity and people who maybe are different, way different, is I've discovered the best place to find Jesus is always in that space in the margins of society, because I believe that's where Jesus is. I remember Tony Campolo, who's one of my heroes. Tony Campolo, when I was a young guy in college, I heard him preaching about Jesus saying, when I was naked, you clothed me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. And everybody's saying, when did we do these things to you? And Jesus said, when you did it unto the least of these, you were doing it unto me. And what Jesus was saying is, when you encounter those people that are different, I'm there. I am in that encounter. And that's been just revelatory to me. When I meet someone that is very, very different, I have a tendency of trying to just peer deeply, because I think God is somewhere here and I'm supposed to see something different. I'm supposed to understand something different. Well, I also think it makes a huge difference for us when we do this. I know in our church, as we have opened our arms more and more to embracing diversity in its fullest, our church heart has expanded and grown as a beautiful thing. So we're in the perimeter of Atlanta. We kind of considered a city church, and occasionally a white couple will show up from outside of the perimeter of Atlanta. They'll show up from the burbs, and they show up from the burbs, and I'll think, are they in the wrong place? Do they know that we're a super diverse, embracing kind of a church? Not long ago, we had a couple who showed up. They had a little boy, 3-year-old little boy, and I met with them after church, and I said, what brought y'all here? Again, they're thinking, yeah, we got to the wrong place. This is crazy. We didn't mean to be here. But this young couple looked at me in the eye, and I never forget, the wife said to me, we want to raise our son in diversity. And in the suburbs, everybody's the same color. Everybody votes the same way. Everybody it's more of a group think. At least that was her words to me. And we have sought you out because we know you are diverse. Her husband said this, when I saw that you were LGBT affirming, I realized that's a pretty easy way to get a read on how churches teach and practice love and grace. And he is not a believer. He would say, I'm not a real believer in the whole God thing. But he said, we want that kind of experience for our son. Whew, that's unbelievable. I mean, it blesses me very, very much. I think it's time for all of us to open our arms wide, open our hearts wide to people who are different. The great truth teller, Dr. Seuss, told the truth when he said, we are all a little weird, and life's a little weird. And when we find someone whose weirdness is compatible with ours, we join up with them and fall in mutual weirdness, and we call it love. John Lennon, the Beatle, said this, it's weird not to be weird. And that's true. And P.T. Barnum, yeah, he nailed it. No one ever made a difference by being exactly like everybody else. Well, I wanted to read to you from the movie, The Greatest Showman, because this was one of the greatest things I have ever experienced in a movie. And you'll remember it. You'll remember P.T. Barnum had kind of turned his back on these unusual people that he had put in his circus, and in his desire to appease the rich people, he acted like he didn't know them and kind of broke their heart a little bit. But you'll remember Keala Settle. She's a very famous singer in America, but she was the lady who played the bearded woman. She took center stage and she sang this amazing song. It's made me think about the fact sometimes when we embrace people who have thought themselves different, sometimes just the fact that we accept them just like they are, that is one of the great things, that they have a voice, and it encourages them to be able to stand on the fact that they matter and their voice matters. And I don't know that I've ever heard it better than this song that was kind of the big, big, big song from The Greatest Showman. Let me read you the lyrics. I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say. because we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say. No one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, because here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. And then the second verse. Another round of bullets hits my skin. We'll fire away today, because I won't let the shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricades and we're reaching for the sun. We are warriors. Yeah, that's what we've become. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, because here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me. Everybody, church, keep reaching out wide-armed and embrace people who are different than you are, and learn from them and listen to them, and don't judge them. Just listen. We're not trying to change them. We just are loving them. And watch how many of them respond, and how they find their voice, and how they make everything so much better. Hope you have a great week. Can't wait to catch up again very, very soon. Take care.
As I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, brothers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, brothers, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, fathers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, fathers, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, mothers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, mothers, let's go down in the river to pray. Oh, sisters, let's go down, don't you wanna come down? Oh, sisters, let's go down in the river to pray.
Hey everybody, church, my name is John, and I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I approached Ray and I said, look, you guys need someone to ask for the money, because I know you and Stan are focused on doing ministry and you don't want to ask this community for money. But I'm part of the community, so I can make the ask. I moved to Atlanta about a year ago because I needed to be part of a gay Christian community, and I found it here. I absolutely love the camaraderie and the community that I have now, and I love going to Ray's church every Sunday. It's awesome to be there and to be able to minister and worship. And what we're trying to do is bring that to you at your house, so you have that. I remember what it was like to feel so isolated and alone in Virginia and not really to have a place where I could minister and I could worship. But what we need to do is we need to give back. We need to give so that we can keep the lights on. We can keep this ministry running. We're asking for the 2,000 followers that are out there. We need about 200 of you to give $20 a week. That's $80 a month. And there's a URL at the bottom of the screen and also a number. You can text that number. It's really simple. We'll send you a link back and just click on the link. The link will explain everything about how to give and set up a recurring payment so you don't have to think about it anymore. We really appreciate you giving, and we're excited about the ministry we're going to be able to do with your funding. Thank you, and may God bless you.